I just see. What was that?
It's recording.
Oh, it's recording. Okay. Everybody's here except Mr. Hodges, and he will be here around 4:30. So let's get started. The first order of business is to everybody to recognize our new person that's helping us. Kristen, and you can you be seen there, or can you?
Yes.
Yeah. So we thank you. We welcome you to helping us. You've been helping us in between our meetings. And we have our old assistant here too. And reports are that the baby is doing fine. Okay, the next order of business is on the agenda is the minutes. Everybody got them in the mail, minutes of the March 31st.
Yes.
Okay. Any corrections or additions to the minutes?
Nope, it's good to me.
Okay. Want to move to approve them?
I move to approve.
One of our other people raised their hand as a second. David raised as a second. Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes, either raise their hand or say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. The minutes are approved. Okay. Unfinished business. You should have before you something that is called goals. Okay. Have that sheet. But I don't think they don't have those. Okay. But that's sort of the goals were sort of the unfinished business. Number one on there was to finalize and print the HPARB handbook, and we have it here. I have some things that we're going to change in it. And I think we need to add a couple things, but there are copies here for everybody. If you happen to come by this way, stop by and pick up your copy, okay? Continue to work with the county and the King William County Historical Society in putting layers in the GPS maps. Well, we sort of tabled that because the county was abandoning the person that was doing that, but there have been new changes which we discussed at the Historical Society meeting. Bob, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, basically when the county switched from the GIS organization Timmins that we were using to Vision, which is the new system for maintaining real estate property card information, they anticipated that the new company would be able to handle the mapping, but as it turns out, it's not working. So they're going back to using Timmins, which we'd already developed a relationship with and a prototype. So I'm encouraged that we're going to be able to resume our project. I just need to go back to them when the timing's right with getting another proposal and then going back to the Historical Society with approval of whatever funding and scope of the project we decide. And I would hope that would be in the next month or so.
Okay. The next thing I hear is revised application for certificate of appropriateness. And you don't have it, but they have been, you have it if you're sitting here, but there's the application. I don't know if we have got all the changes in here. Did you type these? So you made the changes that we said at the meeting. Okay. Okay. So these are kind of brief, but they are that's better than nothing. And we still have to work on maybe some other forms and some procedures. Because these talk about certificate application and so forth, we need to probably come up with some things that don't require us having a meeting for, that we could review without a formal meeting. For instance, if somebody was changing the paint color, that's something we probably could circulate among us and say, okay, that looks good, everybody agreed, and so forth. So we have to work a little bit on that. I want to take these, the form and the procedure, and I want to put that in the handbook. Okay. We still need to develop some more procedures and forms. So if anybody has some ideas, I said last time, I encouraged everybody to go online and look at what some of the other areas are doing.
But typically they're. So I come from like Gloucester, who didn't have one, but also Suffolk, and there are administrative forms for when it doesn't go through the historic.
Yeah, that's, we need to
Or-
develop some stuff like that.
So if you like, I can pull from.
If you can pull some of those, that would be great.
Okay.
I mean, some of them get really complicated. I mean, some of them have books this thick. Richmond is one that's unbelievable in terms of what they have. They have such detail, it's unbelievable. But if you could look at some of those procedures, that would be great. That we can look at just increasing it, what we have a little bit. The other was work with residents to identify possible nominations of properties to be included in the National Registry of Historic Places. We haven't really done anything about that.
I did send out the survey, the 2014 shared the document that you asked me,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
had a
right.
list of all the
Yeah.
proposed, or
Proposed
I
ones, yeah.
think the way it's listed is properties that they feel are eligible to be considered for the disposal.
How many were there, Bob? Would you say?
Of those that were
They thought was eligible.
recommended
Yeah.
as possibly less than a dozen,
Doesn't, okay.
but there were quite a few.
Okay.
I have actually followed up on a couple of them and tried to encourage the people to think about it without any success. I think part of the problem is education or understanding of what it means to be on the National Register. There's some people that have this feeling that they're going to be regulated, that they can't make any changes without approvals and that sort of thing. So maybe there's something we can pull from the Department of Historic Resources that is sort of like the general what's involved, and make sure it's clear that there's no restrictions on these homes or
Or we
buildings.
could even take what they have and. Because I don't think it isn't to encourage people, it's basically more procedural. Maybe we can take what they have and add something to it. Once we had something like that, my thought was that maybe then we could divide up those among ourselves. And each one of us take one or two, contact the person and say, I'm going to send you this material, and then I'm going to call you, and I'm going to call you back if you had an opportunity to review it. How does that sound to everybody? David? Does that sound good to you? You can unmute yourself. Why don't you?
I understand. I'm in the office, so I didn't want to have everybody else listening in on this as well. No, I think it's a reasonable approach. I think the part of this that can be a good launching off point is that they do have a determination of eligibility already, which is putting them a step forward. They don't have to go through the preliminary information form part of the process. Now, some of those determinations are quite old. And so normally that the property owner go back and get a new determination of eligibility after 5 years. In those cases where a property was determined ineligible, meaning that they were not eligible, that applies to that as well. So you do have some properties that 5 years ago were not seen as necessarily significant, but that now are. That's more relevant for properties that were discussed back in the 1990s or in the 1980s, where they weren't paying as much attention to properties that are postbellum, 1860s to 1900, or particularly interesting properties from the early 20th century. So, I think part of the thing that we might want to look at longer term is commissioning an expanded architectural survey of the county. That goes a long way to not only identifying potential properties that we could encourage for documentation through the National Register, but also potential districts. And districts are great because they bring in properties that might not have a uniform integrity or that might work good in a group. And so basically intersections where you have country stores, post offices, those are usually pretty good preservation instances that the properties, one of them not as part of a group, may not, if you look at them as a total group, that's where you start looking at them being significant enough to be listed. So back to the original point, reaching out to private property owners who are already determined eligible, I think it's brilliant. And I think it's a good first step where additional steps could really prove beneficial, even for those that may not have been determined eligible in the past, but might be approved on review today.
As I remember, when we did that survey, there's a picture and then there's a brief description for each one of those properties. Is that?
Well, there's
The survey.
there's several categories, but some of the survey is list previous homes that have been had studies or surveys, but were not included in this one. And then you have another category of those that were visited and documented, but not eligible, or not recommended as being eligible. And then the category of the ones that are recommended as being eligible.
Now, the recommended ones.
Some of them have more information than others as far as details in this document.
Did the ones that were recommended, did that include the new recommendations, or were there recommendations in the old ones that were reviewed?
Both. Both.
Both.
If
Okay.
they were not surveyed this time, which was
Okay.
2016 or whatever, and they were eligible the last time they were surveyed, then it would have been identified in the document.
Okay. But
But Dave, let me ask you a question. What we have is one particular survey that was done for King William. There's 3, 4, 5, 6 others. All of this resides in the Department of Historic Resources. And I know you have access to that information. I'm just wondering if it's more complete in that for any one given home or place of significance, that you would have all the studies included for that home rather than just the one that was done in 2016. The last one. So
I think it's say again.
I don't know what kind of reporting is available out of that system. I know you have access. But if we wanted to pick a
So
home,
all of the cultural resource management reports, or the vast majority of them, are now in digital form. And that's something they've done in the last 6 months to a year. So there's a good chance that if you wanted to look at something of an architectural survey for the county, particularly the ones done, I believe, in 1976, when they had additional funds back in that period of the discipline, you'll probably be able to get some of that from the state. A lot of those on the criteria at that time that people were really most focused on, which is you prominent property owners, major events related to wars and presidents, some archaeology, some Native American stuff that was fairly upfront and straightforward, but not a lot of the ones that would potentially be seen now as being significant. So, in some ways, one of the challenges is determining what are the priorities for preservation or for study that we would have as a community, because in the ones that predate the 20 teens, you'd have a hard time seeing folks focusing on African American resources or tribal related resources or poor white related resources for that matter. And so with a county that doesn't have a ton of development like King William, there's a strong chance a lot of those places still remain architecturally. And we might want to go ahead and modify some of what we look at to start trying to consider, how do we approach the preservation of those things or the study of those things, the documentation of those things.
So if I came up with a DHR number, resource number, and provided that to you, could we get a report for, say, a dozen of these that have been identified as, and then we'd have the complete documentation, not just the most recent survey?
Yes and no. So every single one of these files or site numbers is supposed to have a series of photographs, a site plan, and then associated documentation that's on file. And some of the more recent studies only have the photographs, the site plan, and the form as it's filled out online. Those are the easiest to get. And if they were more recent files, I could get you everything and it wouldn't take me more than 30 seconds per file number that you give me. Some of the older properties, they have a lot more documentation that's still in paper form. And on a limited basis, the state will go ahead and scan those in because they see every time they scan those in that they're getting closer to getting everything scanned in. They just use the request as a rationale for scanning the stuff. So if you give me the list, I can do the best that I can with it. But in some cases, like the study that we're doing for the courthouse area, there's the property right across the street from the health department. And it's fantastic. And they had about 12 pieces of correspondence with the property owner where they clarified when certain parts of the building were built or taken down and their overall intent to want to be included on the National Register. So, and they're even though the letter was written in the 1990s, they're still the property owner. And so it's one reason that I'm advocating for their property to be included within the new district that would cover the courthouse area.
I have a suggestion. Let me put together what I can pull from the most recent survey as far as homes or sites that are recommended being on the National Register. I'll bring that list to our next meeting with whatever documentation I can pull together on it from either the survey or whatever else I can find. And we'll discuss each one of them and decide where we want to go from there with getting additional information from Dave through the DHR, or whether we want to pick the ones we feel this group would
Well,
support.
there's only a dozen. Could we ask Dave to pull see what he has on the older ones too? And if we don't have them by our next meeting, we could get them the meeting after.
Well, it's basically the same thing. I have to come up with the numbers and I might as well put the name of the place and whatever information is available.
But you don't have information on the old surveys.
No,
But you have the fact that they were recommended.
yes,
Okay, so what
on
I'm saying,
previous survey,
yeah.
no details, just the
Yeah.
name and the
So why
DHR.
don't you get the recent ones and any information you can get on them, and that'll be an agenda item for our next meeting. And David, the ones from the previous survey, he'll give you the names of those, and then you see if you can get anything from DHR for that. That sound good? And then we'll spend we'll spend a major portion of our next meeting talking about this and figuring out what we're gonna do. Okay. Okay, and then the last one in here is to seek certification for a local government status. I want to wait until Bill Hodges gets here to talk about that. Because one of the things that you need if you want to apply for it is a letter from an elected official, basically supporting the application, okay? But while we're waiting for that, let me come back and let's go to the handbook, okay? Mine had, one thing I noticed was a missing page. I don't have page 28 in my, or it's 28, no, 28 is there. No, we do have 28, but I think what we need to put in, let me go back and basically say what I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this as something that I would send to the state as part of our application process for certified local government. So for instance, even though here on page 28, we have a map that shows where all the historic districts are, what I want to include in this is the actual individual maps of each one of the historic districts, which we have. They're all, we got them printed out. So we would
Send them to her in case she doesn't have them. I will make sure Christina has them, because I gotta show her all that stuff.
yeah, okay,
So
but
the
we
each
have,
district
so
map.
what we're gonna have is each one of the historic districts, the map of it and its boundaries and so forth. And we'll put that in as part of the district and their overlays, okay?
So Carl, just to be clear, do we want to come up with a book similar to the one that was done 25 years ago, which had write-ups, the list of the parcel numbers, and then the map that shows the actual parcels? So a complete document that's our historic districts. We want to redo that book, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, that would be nice to have the book that had.
And then that could go in here as a section.
You know, if you go in this book.
But that, we need to do that anyway.
Yeah,
That does
what
not,
we
that
have-
doesn't exist.
But
right
doesn't
now.
that have, well, we have a map. And don't we have a list of parcel numbers that go?
We
along?
did, because we updated that when we did that, when we did the public hearing.
Yeah, so we
We updated
have,
that.
We have a PowerPoint presentation, is what I'm familiar with, for the ones that we changed.
Yeah.
And we don't have that for the old ones. It's not all in the same format. We
Right.
have all the information, it's just not
Just
put
had to
together
put
in
into
one
that.
place,
Yeah.
in one format.
okay, could you,
I'll
two
get
of
with
you
her on that.
talk
Mhm.
and get that in the same
Yeah, so do you
format?
guys want that,
Okay,
what we used in the public hearing, that, the slideshow, you want that also incorporated in that book? You want the slideshow?
No, I wouldn't say
from
this, no, I was just saying that
Just.
that
updated
slideshow
from-
had the maps in it,
Yeah,
and it listed the parcel numbers.
Yeah.
But only for the 4 that we were changing.
right.
so
So
we
we
want
need
that,
all
We
seven.
need
all
all 7.
seven, we want the part maps and the parcel
Okay.
numbers and we
I'll
would,
show Christina where to find all that information.
okay.
It's from one of our public hearings we had back in August of 2020? I don't remember.
Long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. All right, for all southern districts.
Do you have a copy of the historic site, historic district book?
It was a blue bike, it was,
I do not, I've never seen it.
yeah,
I've never seen it.
I gave mine to the former administrator,
Ron,
Ron, and, you know, that's why I don't have it.
Well, I still have mine, and maybe I can get it to one of you. And then that's just the format we want to use, and then there were some changes made in the presentation that.
And some of the property definitions are different than in that blue book, right?
So the properties are,
The the definition of what's included in those have changed because there's been a lot of, we can't take those as today, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that's
The format.
the format. That's what we want to come up with, another book that looks like that, that has the updated parcels.
You still want this handbook, but just making a separate.
Well, I would think it
manual
could be
per
part
se.
of this. If historic districts
Yeah.
is a section in here, it would basically be that book.
Okay.
Let's flip through this quickly. Okay. Criteria is page 9. That's what I- Okay, these are just really these are really National Registry, the National, Park Service state standards for establishing districts. Okay, we just adopted those, okay.
You know, I had a recent situation with, the planning commission asked me if I could provide them with what the historic districts are, and what parcels are made of. They're interested in establishing possibly a village in the comprehensive plan for something around the courthouse area, since there's no restaurants, and, you know. My point is, I didn't have anything to give them other than the PowerPoint presentation. So we need to have a document that's PDF format
shows
that
you
we
where the
can,
districts
it's
are.
either accessible from the website, or at least something we can have in hand to pass on to others that want to know what our historic districts are.
You know, one point on the courthouse, I don't know if you remember, we wanted to expand the courthouse boundaries to include some of the other property that the county owns and so forth. But the county administrator at that point was opposed to doing anything like that. Remember?
Yep.
Yeah, so basically, we weren't going to buck the county administrator and over that. But if they're interested in doing something around here, we might consider some recommendations to them about the boundaries. And David, what you're doing in terms of the courthouse information might influence us in some respect in terms of what those boundaries, we might think what those boundaries would look like. So why don't we put down as one of the things that we want to do at a future meeting is to basically go back and review the boundaries of the courthouse district. Okay, we're waiting for Julia. So, but let me start anyway.
I can tell you that may have changed. We were doing that archaeology study. Mr. Braden did say that may change based on findings. We were looking at doing that as part of the comprehensive plan, but. I think
Yes,
that's
well,
something
it's still going on. Right now, they're looking at two parcels across the street on the either side of Bubiak's office. There's a 65 acre parcel and a 75 acre parcel. But the Hill group was contracted to help develop the comprehensive plan with ideas, had identified a courthouse village. They actually put it right on top of Dave's archaeological dig as proposed.
Yeah.
And after discussing it, it was deemed that was probably not
Yeah.
the right place for it. So they're looking for something else. But my point was, I didn't have anything to give them
Right.
other than a PowerPoint presentation on what the historic district
Yeah.
consists of.
That's
Um,
nice. something for the public, just a handout.
Exactly, yeah, people ask about it, what are they, where are they?
I think we're all familiar with what certified local government is. Right? Everybody up to date on what, who's looking for certified local government? Well, let me run over, because one of the things I'd like to do is to basically start the process now for us to apply for certified local government. And let me run through what are the requirements in order to be certified local government, okay?
Do you have a copy of that, so we don't have to take notes? Can you get us?
I have a copy of the criteria, the overall one I don't have. If you go to DA, Department of Historic Resources website, the easiest way to find it, it doesn't come up under certified local government easy, but they use the abbreviation CLG. So if you go to their website and put in CLG, you'll get an overview of what certified local government is. And then when you put that up, it will give you a prompt for the requirements for certified local government. But let me go over what the criteria are, because I'm saying I want to start the process, and I want everybody to agree with whether you think we meet the criteria to start the process or not, okay? So the local government must adopt a historic district ordinance that defines district boundaries, okay? We've done that, right? We have that. Establishes a review board. We are the review board.
Review board for changes to additions.
Identifies actions that must be reviewed and standards for review. We don't have a whole bunch in the way of standards, but I'm not going to dwell on that too much. In general, provides for the protection of local historic resources. I guess we sort of do that. Must work as an advocate for preservation in the locality. I think we do that.
Have you met
Must
Christina, the new?
Continue to survey its local heritage resources.
She's our new zoning administrator.
How do you quantify these things?
Must promote public participation in its local stewardship program. And annually report on GLC responsibilities. And we just started on this because we're going to ask you to help us with this, okay? Talking about certified local government, and let me give you this, which you can take home and read. This is what certified local government is, current definition as far as the state is concerned.
Is it like accreditation?
Yeah, but basically, what it does at the state level, it basically comes to us as somebody that has some expertise. So if there's a nomination for registry, they will come to us and ask us about what we think about that, things of that nature. They will basically be eligible to apply for grants because we're certified local government, a couple of other things that are on that list. The reason I handed it to you is I'll go through what the application requires the following. A request for certification from a local chief elected official. And we're wondering whether you would be willing to be that elected official, okay? With written assurance that the authority fulfills fulfills the requirements, and I've given you the requirements there. We're not ready to do this yet. We still got to get some material together, but would you be willing to be?
I can do that. I think Travis would do it in as chairman, since it says the chief elected official.
The local chief elected official. Is it, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know what that means,
He's the
but,
chief.
He's the chief?
but, the chairman, I would think, and I don't think he'll have a problem with it.
Okay.
And I will if he does.
Okay,
Okay,
I sort of skipped over that too quickly, as chief elected official. Okay.
and I don't know what, I've never heard of, if they were
Yeah,
chief executive officer, it'd be the county administrator, but, and when they threw elected official in there,
okay, so I guess.
I
they're
guess
not-
it could be any of the five of us.
So that may be, who is the board of supervisors, who's the chair?
Chair is
Travis.
Travis right now.
Okay, all right, well, we'll get to Travis.
And
You
if
might
this is
keep
off
that.
till January, it'll probably be more.
The what?
If it's off until January, it'll probably be more for
Okay,
next year.
yeah, okay. All right, why don't you hang on to those? So the first is a letter, the second is a copy of the preservation ordinance and maps showing the areas and sites protected by the ordinance, and that's the reason that I want to put in this book, okay? The other thing that I thought that we could put, where is the county right now in coming up with their ordinance?
That's a good question. I've not been in that department.
Yeah,
It's supposed to be very
Do
soon.
you know where they are
I think
with
it's
the
gonna be
ordinance
presented
right
to the
now?
board of supervisors in October.
Yeah.
It
Do
should,
you know where they
it
are
should
with
come to us
adopting
next
it?
month or
Adopting
November. One or the other.
So,
October, November.
October, November, it should come to us, I think. Unless it gets delayed again. It seems like every time we turn around, it's another hiccup in the verbiage, that type of thing.
okay,
The zoning ordinance actually on September 27th.
So you're talking about Monday,
Yes,
okay.
That's when it'll be presented, but it probably wouldn't be approved until.
you said September 27th, what?
September 27th is when the zoning ordinance is being.
That's just
presented
part of
for
that
an
ordinance,
actual
that's
vote.
just part of that
Mhm.
thing, right?
Well,
Zoning is part of that
That's-
ordinance.
That's the zoning. Now,
That's the ordinance,
that's
but
the ordinance. I'm not seeing this piece
then
of
the
it.
whole documentation, you know, a whole lot more than just the ordinance.
Right, I need to verify that this piece of it is in there, so I'm not seeing
it
this.
should
portion.
all be, Sherry had worked on getting that over to them. I forget his work on it.
The Berkeley group.
Yeah,
For your background, what we did, there was a model ordinance that the state had, which was significantly a lot more than what the current ordinance was. Like the current ordinance is like 4 pages, and this probably was 15 or
Yeah.
20 pages.
that's one page.
So what this board did was to take the model ordinance from the state, and they took what was currently the ordinance in the county, and they rewrote it completely. We then submitted that to the county and to the group that was working on that. I'm trying to remember the name of the,
It had to be Berkeley then.
I think it's Berkeley.
It had to be Berkeley, because they were the ones that
Yeah.
were working.
But that was under the planning commission.
But, right, the planning commission was working through that.
Right.
If we want to find out if it's in there, I can talk to Tom Breeden, chair. And
I haven't seen every piece of it since it started before I came on board, but I can check first thing.
yeah, so I want to know whether what we submitted actually got there. There were 2 changes that we were supposed to have. I talked to the people, offered to make those changes. And they basically said they would make the changes for me, those 2 changes. But
I just don't want to misspeak. So let me confirm it first thing in the morning. They
Okay.
sent us the complete revision, so I want to make sure it's in there.
All right, ordinance 0921, amendments to the King William County zoning and subdivision ordinance will be presented on the 27th.
Okay, that's just the zoning portion of, but it goes beyond that, right?
Well, no, I think that's pretty much it. Everything that,
Subdivision.
that's the subdivision was the big part, but it did include the historical part, and then there was some other bits and pieces, but
Yeah, it's
It
updating
should
the
be in there.
entire zoning ordinance. And then
Okay.
it would normally be.
So could you get me a copy of what our port?
I can, it's 100,
No, this is our,
just that piece,
Our-
yes,
our piece.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's online.
So they can-
I think you're supposed to be able to access it
Yeah,
online.
you
it's
should be
gonna
able to
act-
see it on the county website.
It is, it's on the county website.
Yeah,
all right,
it's just a lot of pages to call through, but
But I will
I'm
send you
sure
just that portion.
I can send it first thing.
yeah, and can you help
Mhm.
her find sure where our portion was?
Yeah, I
Okay.
will, and if
All right.
not, I'll.
All right.
They renumbered everything, so I will find,
Okay,
they renumbered it too.
Look for the word historic.
Yes, absolutely.
It's good, you know, I've got a few, but I'll get with Christina on everything.
all right. When that gets approved, okay, which apparently it might get approved in September. Or it just might go out a second time or something like that. I'd like to include that, our portion of that ordinance in this thing, because one of the requirements is
All right, the public hearing is Monday night on the proposed zoning ordinance.
okay,
I think it's October, is what I remember seeing in the schedule. As far as the board voting. But like Bill said, that could easily slip to November if there are questions or.
If, with this one, it's been a lot of public, input, so it could be extended to October for a vote, but it's up for public hearing on Monday.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff about how many lots, how big the lot should be and all that other stuff.
Setbacks.
Yeah, setback, there were several meetings about that. All right, if you could let me know
Yes,
that we have it, and also let me know if it's online,
it's online.
what the page numbers are, so I don't have to search through the whole, I can, tell me it's page 28 through whatever it is. And then we can look to see if the two changes we want, but we completely rewrote that. Hopefully they were ready to put it all in. One of the things that we will need, gentlemen, also, when we get to submitting this application, and as I said, I want to wait until that ordinance is approved before we put in the application. We need a resume for everybody that's on the board. So if you all could be thinking about sending in a copy of a resume, can be brief, but we will need that from everybody. Okay, to go in with the application.
Just, I'm not sure what a resume would look like for something like this. There's no interest in what your business or occupation history is it? I mean, what, education? What
I don't
else?
know, I was thinking about the same thing myself. My education has nothing to do with directly related to this. I was thinking more of the fact, I mean, there's a lot of good things we have on this board, David's background, okay, and so on and so forth. Us having historic houses, okay, I think that stuff should be on.
That's part of a resume?
Part of a resume. It should be on this. It's a qualification for being on this on this board. I have an easement on property for DHR. I put that on there that I have an easement. I put on my involvement and with the Archaeological Society of Virginia, and the fact that I got that the certification that DHR is part of, that type of thing, I think would be good. But even if, other things are, and then John has an historic house.
Members of the Historical Society, Museum Council,
And or
whatever.
members of, that were involved in the Historical Society and all those other things, that's what I would put on. And I would also put in something about how long you lived in the county and so forth, because that might be important that you understand the county. And things like, John, like you have an interest in history and so forth, put something like that. That's down, that's the type of thing that I would put.
Would it be more appropriate maybe for a background or even a resume for each one of the board members?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a resume,
But that's what they're really looking at, are you qualified to,
right, but my education and background in engineering and IT is not something that would be of interest.
well, engineering might be a relationship to specifications for buildings and so forth, right?
I guess, I don't know what, I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, that might be, but my healthcare background was nothing to help me in terms of this. Okay.
If there's a template or a example of, I mean, if this is required for certification, and every other county has done this, right? Must be something out there.
I don't think the criteria, the ordinance basically had in the definition that who they wanted on the suggested backgrounds of people that were on there. They wanted
Architect,
an architect if you could. They wanted somebody with archaeology experience. And then half of them or something like that had to be local people, I think, was one of the other criteria that they had. So that's why I put in how, like, you've been in the county for a while and so forth. I think that's what they're looking at, the relationship to why they want a resume. I mean,
okay,
you could put down your educational background, basically, somebody might feel that if you have several college degrees, you might be a better member of the board, but other people might not care about that, but. Okay, so let's run through
Just
we're
interrupt you a little bit. It's in the package. It's page 111. That's where the ordinance starts. 111.
pretty good with that, Bob.
Then it goes on from there.
Everything.
The ordinance goes to page 200 and something though.
You've got my glasses on, I still can't read. Hold on, let me see what it says. It says page 111 of 135. So this is probably just the ordinance, it's not the whole entire package. So that's what, 24 pages. And that's 0.
Now, is that available online to anybody that,
I'm online right now.
but I can get it online
Yeah.
too?
Yeah, I just went in through King William County.
Okay.
And
the
went
way,
into the,
Board of Supervisors,
the agenda,
agenda for the board. of
Monday
Supervisors?
night, for Monday night.
Okay,
And if you go down, this is item number 11B in the package.
okay.
I think it's out there though, just to document itself. Those
Yeah, I'm
those
sure.
agendas are huge
Yeah.
because they've got.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff to weed through.
Yeah, but I mean, he can go to page 111 of the agenda, and that
Oh, it's
is
one-
the start of it.
111 through 135.
Of the agenda for Monday's meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what it's showing on the page anyway.
all right.
Yeah, no, but there's
And
also under,
item, whatever item I said that was,
11B,
11B.
11B.
I think the entire ordinance is out there as a standalone document on the website.
Oh, I'm sure
I'll
it
look at-
I'm sure it is.
It
You think it's more than,
it is.
that's only 24 pages.
Yeah.
You think it's more than 24 pages? And our piece was a lot more than that. I mean, was it not a lot more than ours, but ours was at least 10 or 15 pages.
Yeah, 24 doesn't sound right.
Doesn't sound right to me, no. 'Cause
Let
I
me-
remember seeing a document about
Let
that.
me look and see if I can put that down.
All right. Okay, we decided at the next meeting, we are going to, sort of work on looking at, those properties that are nationally, registered, eligible,
Potentially eligible.
potentially eligible.
They're very careful about that word.
Okay, all right. And that should basically, that should take up a good portion of the meeting, talking about those. So, when do we want to meet? When do we want to meet again? In about a month, maybe, or so? To allow us to get that together?
Yeah, it won't take too long to get that together.
Okay, all right. Maybe look at setting up a meeting towards the end of October then. Anybody going anywhere end of October, or anybody leaving the country or so forth, we can send out some dates, okay?
I won't be here the last weekend.
The last week,
It's like the 30th, 31st.
okay, all right.
before that.
So let's look at, the week of the 20th, something. And everybody agree we want to meet around 4:30 when David's done with work at that point in time. You're pretty free too, around that time, most of the time.
Yes, unless like I was at the court today,
Yeah,
or the
yeah.
courthouse, and I didn't get out before that.
Okay. And then we'll continue to work on getting this book in order. And that's about, I guess, that's about, and then start thinking about your resumes and putting a resume together. It looks to me that we probably wouldn't be filing for certification until after the first of the year, and that's when that's when the board selects new people first of the year.
Yes, it would, they'd be put in place well, it'd be actually the end of January, because they put them in at the meeting. And this, I'm looking at the draft ordinance, it's 239 pages.
That sounds more like it.
That sounds a little bit more
That's
like,
on the website.
okay.
Which is zoning and subdivision ordinance update. And this was according to this, was last updated September the 8th.
That sounds right.
Okay,
'Cause it was
but it's on the web. It's
Yeah, I might think about going to that meeting just because for a portion of the ordinance is in there. I'm not to say anything, but to make sure if anybody says something against it, that we can defend it. Okay, are we ready to adjourn? Okay, David, you need to get me my keys back, right? Okay, all right, okay. All right, I guess we're adjourned. Thank you all.